Hello, Scott. I'm the guy. Hello, Scott.
We're going to try all that again. I just saw that screen share didn't happen. So let's try all that again. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, all of our friends in the Zoom room. Welcome, everybody on Facebook. And we're going to try this one more time. Here we go.
What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Awakening World, and welcome to one of the most exciting weekends that I think we'll ever have. I am so stoked to be collaborating with my friends at RelationFlix. You know, life is relationship. From the moment we wake up until we go to bed at night, we're in constant relationship to ourselves, to each other, to life, to nature. And so if we really want to change the world, we start by changing our relationships. And this weekend, you're going to meet amazing, wonderful, fun, and wise teachers, many generations, many different ages, cultures, all of whom have wisdom and medicine for us to improve our relationships. Some of them are people I've known really well. Some of them are love coaches through my Love Coach Academy. And some of them are people I've just met through RelationFlix. But I am so delighted to be collaborating. And it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful weekend. So welcome, everybody. Before I introduce Trish and our wonderful presenters, I want to invite the people that are watching live on Facebook. Come on into our Zoom room. We're going to have a really active show. There's going to be questions and answers and a chance for you to get some of your relationship questions answered. But it's easiest if you come on into our Zoom room. And that's easy. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, and register. And boom, you'll be in the Zoom room with us, and it'll be easier to interact. And we're going to have an amazing group of people. Now, many of you have been following me for quite a while, and know that on Friday night is a very special night. It's Trish time. And for a year and a half, we did our Straight Talk show on Friday nights and then switched over to the Awakening World. So I am going to turn it over to my beloved partner in Friday night happiness and joyfulness and yumminess to tell you all about RelationFlix and a very special friend of ours. But welcome, Trish.
Hi, Scott. Thanks. Well, I will, because I'm excited, like extra today, I'll tell you a little bit first about RelationFlix. And you are all in for an amazing treat. RelationFlix is an exciting new video subscription platform specializing in e-courses and educational videos on relationships and intimacy, all for an extraordinary low price. So what I know about RelationFlix is that, well, I'm actually gonna zip it and let Stephen talk to you about it. And Stephen is Stephen holds a really special place in my heart. Not only is he an excellent teacher, but he's a beautifully compassionate and empathetic man. And he is a trauma-informed relationship communication and emotional intelligence expert. And he's been supporting people to experience wellness in life, romance, sexuality, and spirituality for 10 years. Known for his passionate stage presence and highly compassionate demeanor, he brings a signature of charm to the stage. That is super duper sure. Hi, Stephen.
Hey Trish, wow! I think I'm gonna need to take a moment. You got me like flustered here. I need to take that in for a moment. Yeah, thank you for the warm welcome.
Good, because I'm going to add some fluster. Trish and I both have known Stephen for quite a while, and Stephen holds the record for taking our Relationship Essentials course the most times. He and Anuprabha took it 4 times, and he is so dedicated to relationship. And he's my friend, he's my colleague, and his dedication to really wanting to do relationships with maximum integrity and fun is excellent. And he's been putting years into this project. He first started telling me about it a long time ago. So, Stephen, congratulations on the launch of RelationFlix.
Thank you so much, Scott and Trish. Yeah, again, appreciate the welcome and just the opportunity and your open-hearted yes to participating in the RelationFlix project, as well as having us on the shows this weekend. So thanks so much, Scott. For those that don't know me, I've got a little bit of a story. So I've been a relationship and intimacy enthusiast for a good 20 years plus now, and I really started taking it on meaningfully about 13 years ago. And since then, I've done tons of coaching. I've taught weekend-long workshops. I've traveled teaching, taught online events, online courses, multi-week online courses. And I had a moment that changed my life a few years ago. So what happened was I was in Southern California in the Mojave Desert, and it was close to midnight. And I received this very clear intuitive signal to go hike this mountain. And it was so random, the timing to get this clear hit to go hike this mountain. And so despite my inner resistances and logical sense making faculties, I decided to go hike this mountain. And when I got to the top, much to my surprise, there was a couple on the top of the mountain as well. And they were fighting like cats and dogs and like screaming at each other. It was full on. And something felt so divinely perfect. Like this moment was fated. And I had this moment. It was like a lightning bolt of clarity that just dropped. And it was just this exquisite clarity that a part of the reason why I'm alive is to be an instrument of relationship healing and transformation for people. And this experience really validated that. I'd already known it, but this experience really was the icing on the cake. And so that's a bit of the undercurrent of what inspired the RelationFlix project. The RelationFlix project it's a video subscription service platform that's specializing in e-courses and educational content on relationships, intimacy, dating, communication skills, emotional intelligence, conflict resolution, attachment theory, psychology, grief, trauma, and heartbreak navigation and healing, as well as tons of content that's overwhelmingly in like the personal development domain. So it's a personal development video subscription service platform. And I think Scott was the first person that I told about it. And as soon as I told him about it, he said such this immense yes. Like he jumped on a plane to come up to Canada and immediately started shooting content with me. And that was 3 years ago. And one of the next people that I told about the project is someone else who's on the show, Dolphin Casper. And when I told him about the project, again, just like this warm, enthusiastic, like, yes, this sounds amazing and I want to be a part of it. And at the time that I had this conversation with Dolphin, at the time and actually currently, I hold Dolphin in an extraordinarily high regard. His level of just warmth and clarity in his spoken word, his eloquence and articulation, and deep embodied actualized relationship wisdom that he just emanates. He's like an oracle of these pieces and qualities. And so it feels like an honor and a privilege to be working with these two men. And yeah, with that being said, I'm going to happily pass the talking stick over to Dolphin.
Oh, so gushy. That was you, Trish. You brought the gushy word in.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's sort of like in life, sometimes things are difficult to discern, sometimes things are painful, and we're kind of searching for answers. These first initial conversations that I had with Steve weren't like that. It was like all of the things that matter most to me, the things that I'm most involved in, the things that I feel like I'm best at, all kind of get touched by this project. It's by far the biggest project I've ever been a part of. It's stretching me in ways that are wildly uncomfortable, but I know why I'm doing it, and just really honored that it just the stars aligned and I happened to be around, and that Stephen and I looked at each other and said, like, yeah, let's build this. And similarly to Stephen, I was fated, I think, to get into this work. My mom started to do her work before I was born, and it was deeply relational. The work that she created and worked with people around intimacy and communication for over 30 years was, for me, about like, how do we strip away all the nonsense? How do we strip away the things that don't truly address us as human beings and don't address our deepest heart's desire? And then how do we start there? How do we start with the things that we know matter most, that we know create the biggest impact? And how do we build a way of being, relating, and communicating that honors those things all the way through? So I had this example outside of me that was showing me how to do all that. And so even though through my adolescence and maybe my young adulthood, I tried to kind of, depart from the path. Maybe we all do. We know the path somewhere inside, but we need to do our thing. And so, for a time I was maybe lost, but I came back to this work, and for me, it's the unending journey, but it also, like, the process is so alive for me that I don't actually need to get somewhere with it. I just love to be a part of these conversations, a part of these opportunities where we can bring the real potential of human relationship into being And I love that Scott and Trish are so supportive and loving and on board. And we've got a chance to play in the sandbox a few times, and I know this is just the beginning. So yeah, I feel very heartened and honored and inspired to be here. And for those of you that have joined for the call tonight, thank you so much for being here. It means a lot that you're a part of the journey with us. So thank you. I could say a lot more, but I think I'll call it there. And I would like to introduce a friend and a colleague, Farah. I met you just a few months ago, actually, like when it was last summer, and I had a chance to meet you through another colleague, a co-friend of ours, Zamir Danji, and that weekend where we got to shoot content for RelationFlix, I felt like you're someone who is so calm and centered and grounded in the work, and also someone who just naturally warms the room. And when we sat down to shoot, I had been shooting for, it'd been a couple of years of creating content, and I'd kind of gotten into a routine of like, oh, this is how it goes to create content with educators. And just to let everyone know, Farah she basically was delivering her course in one take. She would sit down, she'd look into the camera, and I think maybe you had to repeat like one or two little parts, but within 2.5 hours, I think she had sorted out her whole course. It's brilliant. She brings an exceptional level of expertise around nonviolent communication, and then weaves it with sort of the Eastern tradition of yoga and what that represents in terms of embodiment and presence and mindfulness. And I think those two, like nonviolent communication and yoga, in a way they belong together. And so I've just been honored to get to know you better, Farah. I'm so excited that you're on the RelationFlix platform and that you were able to join us tonight. And that's my loving introduction to you. And like with everyone, I'm excited that this feels like the beginning of a whole bunch of delicious work that we get to do together. So thank you for joining us tonight.
You're still muted, Farah.
Wow, I really feel humbled to be a part of such an amazing vision and platform. And I'm really so grateful to be a part of this and to be invited into this amazing, exciting project that I think is so needed in our world, because relationship peace is really a part of peace in our communities and peace on a global level. And that is so needed today. I didn't have a lightning bolt moment like Stephen did, though I wish I could share a story of something like that. I really came to this work from actually making all the mistakes, from studying radical feminism and political science in university and becoming so ideological that I found myself isolated in my relationships. And through a bunch of relationships that failed, both family and intimate partnerships, I realized that I really need to learn this. And that really was the beginning of my interest in studying about relationships, studying about myself, learning a different way of communicating. And as Dolphin mentioned, I feel so grateful that early in my life, I had an opportunity to really walk into the path of yoga as a spiritual path, and to meet and interview an incredible number of spiritual teachers and masters who really allowed me to deepen so many of the gems that spiritual teachings offer, and really enhanced all of the work that is a part of conflict resolution and a part of nonviolent communication. So I'm really excited to be a part of this. I'm really excited to hear what questions people may have, what things are really we're all curious about and wanting to know, because I think really that this platform and all of us are really here in a role to serve, to share what's been helpful for us and to really listen to the things that people are struggling with, and hopefully to be able to share things that can really help you find peace, reconciliation, love, and true intimacy.
Beautiful. I'm going to open it up to all of our panelists for a minute and ask you all a question which I have not prepared you for. This is a spontaneous thought. And actually, I was inspired by what Farah just said. We all have suffered in relationships that were dysfunctional, toxic, that maybe started off wonderful and went in a different direction. And so here's a question for each of you. I'll answer it first, and then maybe Trish, and then we'll just see, maybe even follow the same order that we did before. But the question is this: what is a tool that you've learned that you wish you had had prior to a relationship that failed? What's a tool that you've learned which you wish you had prior to a relationship that failed? So since I'm asking this crazy question, I did have a minute to think about it. I'll go ahead and I'll start. For me, I was in a kind of classic relationship where I met somebody, we fell in love. It was amazing for the first year or so, and slowly went downhill. And I was born on Christmas Day. I grew up with a Messiah complex, and I fell into the rescuer role with this person. We met in the mid-1990s, and the relationship ended in 2001. And I wish I had known about the codependency triangle. Because in my world, I became the rescuer, she played the role of victim, and we ultimately both became perpetrators to each other. And I had no idea at that time about enmeshment, codependence, any of those things. And so I'm really, that's like the one that comes to my mind. There's one other thing that I just want to mention, which is we already heard from Farah, and I think Dolphin mentioning nonviolent communication. And I do want to acknowledge my mentor, Marshall Rosenberg, who I was blessed to travel with, study with, create videos and television shows with. And Marshall passed a few years ago, but we're carrying on his work, and RelationFlix is carrying on the work of Marshall Rosenberg. And I just really want to acknowledge that. So thank you, Marshall. You live on through us. And with that, I'm going to turn over to my Friday night partner, Trish. And yeah, there it is, the face.
I'm like, oh no, how do I pick one? So, being a socialized as female person in this crazy world that we live in, with the privileges that I carry and the intersections that I also live into, growing up a poor, very poor trailer park, 600 people, like very small town, with an abusive mother and a distant father. I really didn't quite get how to get me, like this person. So I contorted and played into the social beauty standards and played into the gender roles that I thought would get my needs met. And so in my exploration, there was a lot of things. I mean, I know I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I find one? So there's a couple ones that really struck me so deeply. And one was to actually be able to hear my body, because our society teaches us to disembody and to live up in our heads. And I wasn't able to hear my intuition anymore. And I was mistrusting everything because of the abuse in all of my relationships that kept perpetuating. And so the getting back into my body, this yes and no practice, and to be able to feel what was alive and right was one really powerful piece. Scott taught me the self-empathy practice. in Love Coach Academy that really shifted the way that I could also understand myself and my own drives in the world, which is a really powerful tool. And it's one of the things that I teach a lot to my clients. And this last one comes from Bridge Feltis of the Remember Institute. And I've been practicing this for about a year. It's called the restoration of integrity. And it takes me out of my apology. So instead of the apology being for me, I'm actually taking ownership and acknowledging the harm that I've caused and making positive change. So those 3 tools are the ones that are coming up for me right now. So that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to pass it to Farah.
I have a similar story in that in my first marriage, I fell in love with an Italian man. We met on a beach in Mexico, and I totally lost myself in that relationship. And if I had one thing that I could have learned in that relationship that would have made a difference, I don't know if it would have kept the relationship intact, but it would have made a difference in that I wish I had a relationship with myself. And I think that the practice of yoga really gave me that relationship with myself, gave me a relationship with my breath and my heartbeat. It gave me a relationship to understand emotions and to read emotions within me. It gave me the ability to be able to know when my temperature is rising and when I shouldn't speak and I should take a time out. So, really, I didn't have a relationship with myself, and I lost myself in that first relationship. And I remember I did have a moment where I was attending morning meditation, really searching for answers and really searching for myself. And I remember walking into morning meditation one day, and I had this thought that if I had another relationship and I were to lose it again, it would be okay because I had found myself. And it was a really pivotal moment because I knew that I was bringing myself, the whole of me, into the next relationship. And my husband and I met a year later, and we've been together for 20 years. So the one tool that really helped me was yoga and relationship with myself. I'm going to pass it to Stephen.
Thanks, Farah. Beautiful share. I'm going to bring up a piece that Scott drilled into me during the many programs that I've taken with him. And the one tool that I would easily bring to my past self to support me in a past relationship would be the skill and just inner framework of doing an excellent job of managing my discomfort during difficult situations. I think some of my biggest griefs about how I've shown up in my past relationships are moments where I collapsed and couldn't hold something that was tender or vulnerable or really charged and triggered. I would have loved to have inhabited my body in a way that was more nervous system regulated, centered, stable, and clear. And ultimately, I would have loved to have held past pain with more grace. Yeah. And so for me now, still practicing, still clumsy sometimes, and still drop the ball, but I'm really, really grateful for the tools of just relaxing the body, slowing down the breath, and taking difficult things slowly and taking care so that they don't get overheated and over escalated past a point of no return where it actually gets extraordinarily difficult to hold, extraordinarily charged. So yeah, that's my piece.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we get to hear from Dolphin, and then I have another question for all of you.
Sure, I get to go last. You've taken all the good answers. So, I mean, there's, like everyone said, there's so much, there's so many things. Yeah, what to choose? I think what's been coming up a lot for me in my work with people is the relationship between our our deeper purpose and how we engage our relationships. In other words, in a way, we're actually always referencing deeper values, core values, and mostly unconsciously. And how that shows up is that we tend to have certain things we're attracted to and certain things we have aversion towards, and we don't necessarily know how to be best in service to what matters most. And for me, the more I've become clear about like a deeper purpose for my life before I actually think about relationship, the more I stand in the fire of relationship, the more I don't shy away from what's difficult, the more I say the truth that's hard to say, the more I speak up, the more I stay true to my heart in the face of disagreement, or the more I can say what I really want to say to my partner or the people closest to me. And so that piece, it's not easy to get at, like how do, in a society that's taught us so much about what's meaningful and much of it nonsense, how do we come home to a meaning and a purpose to our lives that can hold all of the difficulties of our relationships? And I love that I'm in a place now where it's crystal clear to me why I'm here, and more it's crystal clear to me how my relationships are in service to that, and it makes what's difficult so much clearer. Not easy, but clear.
You're getting applause on that. People are twinkling your dolphin. All right, well, I'm going to bring everybody back on for a minute for this next question, because I'm eager to see people's facial reactions, because these are not things that I prepared people for. So one of the things that I just want to acknowledge is, yes, we are all relationship coaches. We all make our living doing this, and we're all still learning. And so my next question is, what's the current hard relationship thing you're learning, that you're working on? I'll go first again, since I had a minute to think about it. I've been very concerned and disturbed by the polarization taking place in our world. Whether it's Trump versus Biden, Democrat versus Republican, vax or no vax, there's just such a level of hostility sometimes. And as a coach, I've worked a lot with families that are breaking up over these things, and it's something that I'm deeply troubled by, because every day I'm working with people that are challenged by it. And so bringing it back to myself, I'm working on trying to notice when I'm collecting evidence to support my own beliefs. Because, of course, as human beings, we do that all the time. We have a belief and then we collect evidence to support it. And because we're all living in this kind of social media echo chamber where the algorithms see, oh, well, Scott, does Washington Post and CNN, and he's this, and this. So they give me more of what I've already read and tracked, which keeps feeding my own point of view. So I'm really trying as best as I can to embrace alternative points of view, some of which I have a lot of judgment around and all of that kind of thing. So that's the one that I'm working on, is how open-minded can I be to belief systems that are very different than my own. So that's the one I'm working on. And I'm going to turn it over to Trish, and I'm really good to hear what Trish has to say.
Well, there's two, but I'm going to share one. My dad died in November, and that has taken me on a very interesting path of deepening compassion and deepening empathy and And in this sense, in my definition of what love is to me now is the radical acceptance of what is. And so dealing with the piece of grief, which is very interesting. For me, it felt like this person lived in my body, like this living person energetically lived in my being in a very specific way. He was organized and held somewhere in my body in this way. And that when his body and his energy passed, that he reorganized to a different part of the library of my body. And there was a lot of space in this place. And in this space, I was able to show up for his widow. And it brought so much up for me about, resentment and grief and integrity, as well as holding other people's emotions and entitlement. And I just spent a month melting my brain and my body and my spirit around these pieces of letting go of my identification of values within a connection. And that's a piece that's still pretty raw for me as I step into going to the services next week. And I'd love to share just like a little line out of my diary for you. And these are called lessons in grief. And this is a very personal thing I just wanted to share with you. Being clear, concise, and direct about how much availability and what capacity you have or I have to hold space for or show up for another's experience is a high form of loving action. It's the radical honesty of what you can offer and being just wildly honest about it. And that's one of the pieces. So I'd love to pass it to Dolphin.
Oh dear. Yeah, what am I working on? I have an 11-month-old son, and he has so beautifully displaced uh, certain dimensions of comfort and ease and freedom in my life. And so I think, right now I'm still in a really beautiful, uncomfortable recalibration of what it means to truly not be the center of my own life anymore. And Jessica, my partner, and I are in this surprisingly graceful dance of what it means to honor and take care of and love ourselves and each other, and take care of this little beautiful tender nugget of a human. And and to kind of receive it's like a cleansing, like especially in the West, maybe me more than most, like we have it so easy, and it kind of makes sense to us that we're the most important person in the world, in our own lives, in our own minds. And I think children are meant to displace that. And so, I wrote this piece a while ago about what it's been like to have a son. And one of the things that I wrote is that the love I have for him is meant for everyone. Yeah, and I feel like everything I'm learning about life from him and raising him is meant for the world. And I take that to heart. And it's a lovely learning for me.
Beautiful. Thank you. Let's go to Farah next. Spotlight's on you, Farah.
Okay, there we go. I am so touched, Trish and Dolphin, by what you shared. And I similarly have something that's very present in my intimate partnership, in that 6 years ago, my life partner was diagnosed with a very serious neurological illness. And so coming to terms with that has been really the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and the hardest thing that both of us have had to face, and the hardest thing that he'll probably have to do. And it's also changed and deepened our relationship and our commitment to each other. And there have been difficult times where I feel like I wanted to run away from my life, and there have been bumpy patches. And there's also been a depth of love and care that I haven't experienced before in our relationship. So it's, for me, it gives me a real appreciation for the harmony of darkness and light, the coexistence of opposites, and the invitation to really be in service to someone else. You, like Dolphin said, you really have to let go of ourself. And so the fundamental questions of life and death and existence and love and suffering are very forefront for me, and really giving me fertile soil to work with.
Mhm. Wow. You're getting cyber hugs from Trish and from Steven and yeah, from a lot of people. Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm going to turn it over to Steven and want to hear what you're working on, Steven. And then I'd love for you to tell us more about the Depth Summit and about what's happening with RelationFlix.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge everyone who just answered the question. Like, wow, everyone's bringing it for this round of questions for sure. And all of you, I just feel touched and tender in the heart, dropping into your world with what you're working on in your spheres. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And what's probably the most challenging thing that I'm working on right now, in terms of like just refining my own skill set and capacity, is having difficult conversations, and particularly a certain flavor of a conversation where I know going into the conversation that it's going to have an impact on the other person. And it's the type of conversation where it's like, I know that I need to speak this into the space. I need to speak a piece into the space because it's so glaringly alive for me. And I know that by speaking it and naming it, it's going to hurt the other person. And like detecting the nuances of that dynamic in a way where, like, evaluating, do I need to say this? And I'm talking about the particular conversation where I need to say it, because not saying it means that I'm compromising my own sense of personal integrity. So detecting where a place where I need to speak something into the space, because if I don't, it's actually committing an act of self-violence, but also holding that conversation with care and tactfulness in a way where I'm also caring and honoring of the other person and the impact that it's going to have on them. And then kind of jumping into the fire there, and then still continuing to hold that with as much grace and compassion as possible. It's like when there's two kind of opposing points of view that are both in the space, it's like doing my best to create an atmosphere where, despite these two opposing views being at odds with each other, creating an atmosphere where it's actually okay for us to have these two opposing views, and instead of entering into like a right wrong paradigm. So like navigating that terrain. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for spontaneously answering so from the heart. And before we hear just about RelationFlix and the Depth Summit, talk about depth, right? And that's what makes each of these people such wonderful teachers, because they are going deep in their own process of learning, their own process of self-reflection, which is the foundation of emotional intelligence. And so we're all learning and we all geek out together. Stephen and I geek out about, attachment theory, and Trish and I geek out about whatever we're, teaching on or sharing on a Friday night. And so we're all learning and growing together, including with all of you. Whether you're in our Zoom room, a lot of people on Facebook right now, or any of you watching the replay. The majority of people who watch this can actually watch the recording. So now that we're all here learning and growing together, and the really awesome new way to learn is through RelationFlix. So with that, Stephen, tell us about RelationFlix and this weekend's Depth Summit.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. So right now, real time, we are running an online event this weekend, started today, and there's so much terrain to cover in the next couple of days. We have 34 speakers over the weekend speaking on relationships, dating, romance, communication skills, intimacy, conflict resolution, attachment theory and psychology, emotional intelligence. And something that I'm particularly excited about is at the very end of the weekend, we have a next level conscious relationship dating show that's happening as a part of the event. And in addition to that, we also have right now included a couple more segments to go on Scott's Awakening World Series. The next one's happening tomorrow, Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and Scott's signature Sacred Sunday show at, I believe, 10 a.m. Pacific time on Sunday. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, great. Yeah, and it's free. It's free. And I want to give a tip of the hat to Dolphin, who was just an absolute persistent evangelist for wanting to bring an amazing online event to the world. And I want to acknowledge you, Dolphin, for your persistence and courage and strength and will to bring this, because every time you brought it up, I looked at him and was like, Dolphin, you're aware we're building a video subscription service platform too, right? You're aware that that's on our plate right now too, right? And he's like, yeah, and and I want to do this thing. And I'm really grateful for him and how he just kind of took the reins and just put blood, sweat, and tears into making this happen. And also, I also need to give a complete, just heartfelt shout out to the unsung heroes of the event, and that's the tech support team who are live on this call as well. So feel free to say hi in the chat, David and Pushkar, and if the other members of the tech support team are in here too, I'd love for you to make yourself known into the space. And you can register for free. It's at depthsummit.com. Yeah, completely free to enter. We wanted to bring something that's ridiculously high value and free to everyone. And one thing that you will see on the page with Depth Summit is a mention of the RelationFlix platform. And I mentioned a little bit about this at the beginning of the event here, but the RelationFlix platform, to be absolutely certain, is a video subscription service platform. Our grand opening is on Valentine's Day. And we've been working on this project for 3 years. We have a great internal team, just tons of time and energy and heart and soul and travel and finances and resources, and just so much has went into making this product and this platform. And yeah, we have over 30 educators on the platform, an uncountable amount of hours of video content. And yeah, we really wanted to bring incredible relationship education to people for a really low-hanging fruit of a price point, and wanting to make just these types of teachings really accessible to people. So tons of work. The subscription rate, the subscription fee is relatively low. And for a 1-year subscription, it's gonna be $149. And if you want to subscribe for monthly, our intro rate is going to be $15 a month. So if you get the 1-year subscription, you get 2 free months basically. And on the Depth Summit page, you'll notice that for the weekend, this ends on Monday, that the VIP subscription to the Depth Summit includes a 1-year RelationFlix subscription as well. And that's going for $99. So that's $50 off the normal price of the 1-year subscription. So yeah, we just want to we leaned extremely generous with the price point for this. And I might be a little bit biased, but I just want to say, like, there's been a few moments where I've taken a step back and I've looked at the content that's going on the platform, and like, just from the sheer perspective of someone who's a relationship enthusiast and just enjoys working on myself from a personal development perspective, it's going to be a fabulous platform. Like, we have Scott's signature class, Relationship Essentials, which is just, I was reviewing the content for it, and it's just absolutely dynamite. It's a life-changing course. We have Philippe Lewis, who is teaching a course on the more sensuality side and attachment theory. Dolphin, who's just an extraordinary expert on trauma healing and recovery, he's had a glorious history of working with at-risk youth, and just spending time listening to him talk about his experience there. Like, I've learned so much from him just by hanging out over a cup of tea type of a deal. So we have Paul Sterling's Argue Less, Love More content from his book, because he's a published author. We actually have several published authors who we have courses with, therapists, educators, nonviolent communication educators. Yeah, so this is a list of a lot of the content that we have on the platform.
Wow.
So anyways, that's what we're up to. If it's interesting to you, then you can find the 1-year subscription on depthsummit.com right now, and the grand opening of relationflix.com is happening on Valentine's Day.
Wow. Once again, congratulations, Stephen. Absolutely beautiful. And because I know many of those teachers, as I was kind of looking at it, it's like, oh, all these people that I love and respect. So I also was kind of looking at what's going on our Facebook pages. And on Unify, we have quite a few people that are throwing us beautiful comments. So I want to acknowledge all the comments, and I really want to get to some questions. So here is the next question for everybody. And it's kind of combining a few different comments and questions that came in mostly from Unify. Before we talk about our relationships with other people, let's talk about our relationship to Source, whatever that might mean to each of you, and or our relationship to Mother Earth, our relationship to the planet. Farah, of course, touched on that a little bit with her yoga remarks. But so the question is, what's one tool or tip or practice that each of you want to share for how you connect either to Source or to Mother Earth or to nature or to life itself? Okay. I'll go first since I've had a minute to think about it. For me, it's gratitude. I often say that if I had a religion, it's the attitude of gratitude. Beyond that, I'm multi-denominational. I'll take wisdom from anybody, whether it's a famous spiritual teacher or a drunk on the street. I'll take wisdom from anybody. But as a practice, gratitude is the most important single thing I've ever learned. No matter what's going on in my world, if I can pivot into authentic gratitude, I feel so much better. And it has nothing to do with being spiritual. It just feels better to be grateful. And I do believe, I've been around the block. I'm 66. I'm the old guy here. And I have observed that people that have blessed lives are grateful. And people that tend to have, not always, but people that tend to have challenged lives, often are people that are more cynical or skeptical. So I just want to preach the attitude of gratitude. And no matter what's going on in our world, we can always find something to be grateful for. For example, I'm grateful for Trish, and that I get to do shows with her every Friday night, or most every Friday night.
You crack me up, Scott. I love you. Good question, Scott. And I do want to just touch on something that I'm learning so much about right now. Again, I've been really diving into how we became so disconnected, not only to our bodies, ourselves, the planet, to the our spirit or our connection to whatever is greater than the great mystery. And I mean, we can historically go through it, but this is not the call for that. Call me up and we can talk about it. But there's something that I've been really learning is that when we start to, again, touch back into the body, into our truest, like just letting the body do, like to no longer separate the body from the head, but to bring it back into that connective place of like, oh, I am not separate from my body, and I'm not separate from the earth, and I'm not separate from Stephen and Scott and Vara and Dolphin and the amazing 55 people in this room and whoever's watching out there. And that's the thing. Like I don't see God as something that's separate from what is happening and all of this. So the place for me is to really find my body. So that could be whether it's like, I mean, when I'm feeling separate from, to drop back into my body and to be just do it's like a Gestalt awareness practice. It's just to name what is in the present in the moment and to remember myself, so that if everybody who's watching, you can just name out something, like 3 things, something outward, something on your body, and something inward that you're feeling. And just to drop into that space just now, to come back into the present moment, just to be with what is happening with the breath, right? And so that's one place for me to connect to spirit, to connect back into my body, to hear the earth and to hear the intuition, and to be able to connect, attune to another person, which is a juicy bit of God, I think.
Beautiful. Thank you, Trish. Thank you. Who wants to go next? Just speak and you will show up on camera. If not, I'm going to call on someone. Okay, we're going to go to Dolphin.
Let's go. I was about to unmute myself. So, there's a lot of pathways to what resonates in me in answer to this question, but the word silence comes when I become really quiet. God is there, meaning is there, love is there. And then when I get quiet in nature, it's a particularly striking opening of relationship. Like you look at an ecosystem, it's all relationship. Absolutely everything is moving in concert. And that includes the battle for resources, and that one animal is going to eat another animal. But when you watch it, like when you watch those nature shows, they're all in relationship with one another, and they know it. And to me, our departure from that, and our very kind of technology centric modern culture, I think makes it easy to forget that within us is the same kind of relational ecosystem, and that when we're attuned to it, we also realize that we are a part of that ecosystem outside of us. And similar to what Tris said, when I'm wide open and quiet inside, the distinction between my inner and outer life stops to become so relevant. I'm like a space, and life is flowing outside of me, towards me, within me, and out of me. And it's all intrinsic. I don't have to be something special. I just have to be me. And again, as I get quiet, that all starts to come through. So for me, it's about silence and being quiet inside.
What a beautiful, beautiful response, Dolphin. Thank you. Well, we'll go to your partner, Stephen.
So I've actually got a story. I absolutely adore the teachings of Advaita Vedanta from Hinduism, where like one of the principal themes is that the entire universe is one great big super soul that grows the grass and beats our hearts and moves the universe and yeah, moves the ocean waves, and it's something that's inherent inside of all of us, and it's about establishing a rooted relationship and living from that space. And so I have a story to tell where that came up in my life. So I went to a restaurant once. This was probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and I walk into this cafe, and there's like a tour bus of people who lived in the area, who lived in a senior citizens home. So the demographic in the restaurant was packed full of people who are like 65 to 90 years old. And so I walk into this cafe and I place an order for takeout because there's nowhere to sit. And all of a sudden, the entire restaurant is staring at me. And at first, I was like, am I making this up? Like, am I just kind of tripping out here? Like, is this actually happening? And all of a sudden, I started getting really insecure. And I'm like, what's going on? And like, they started like whispering. And then I realized that the pants that I was wearing had a big hole in it, and it was a brand new hole right in the back where my ass crack is. And it's exposed to this group of senior citizens, and they're all staring at me in the restaurant with this big hole in my pants. And I was just like kind of mortified and went into like this embarrassment kind of shock response. And I was like, I got flustered. And then I remembered the teachings of Advaita Vedanta. And I asked myself, like, these people are staring at me. And then I asked, who's the one behind the eyes that's actually doing the staring? And through the lens of Advaita, it's that one united super soul that moves the universe, that activates our bodies. It's the one cosmic consciousness that's the watcher, the witness. And I was able to manage my embarrassment in that moment by dropping into the reality that it's really just God looking at me through the infinite ways that God expresses itself. And then I scurried out the restaurant, and that's the end of the story.
That's a great story. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, Farah. Spotlight's
Trying
on
to get
you.
this mute thing. Okay. Stephen, I love your story. You're totally speaking my kind of language. I think that for me, what allows me to connect both with the earth and a greater power, and I think that they're connected. I don't think the earth is separate from a greater power, is an attitude of reverence. And what brings me into an attitude of reverence is really being in nature. It's, when you're in the forest and you see all the different shades of green in the winter time, or you go to the ocean and just watch the waves, it for me is it fills me with that feeling of wanting to get down on my knees and fills my heart with this feeling of reverence. And when I feel that I'm connected to reverence in my life, then I feel that I can bring that into my relationships. I can see people with the dignity that each human being has. I can bring that into my relationship with the earth and my actions, and considering my actions and the impact that they have on Mother Earth. I feel so blessed. I live in a house where every morning the sunshine floods into our living room. And for me, that is such an auspicious sign that the sun always rises, that light always follows dark, that light and dark coexist together. And as Stephen said, that there is one without second.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. All right, I'm going to start bringing in specific questions that are coming in. And this next one, not everybody has to respond to, but there's a question about epigenetics. How does epigenetics impact our relationships? And so while you all kind of decide who's going to respond to that, well, just for anybody who doesn't know, epigenetics is the understanding of kind of our biological DNA programming. And it's only been recent, in the last, I think, maybe 10 years, that biologists and whoever study these things have been able to determine that before we are even born, we receive a genetic download of the trauma from our ancestors going back at least 7 generations. I think Mystic Abbot Jerry figured it out when I talked about this once before, and that means we're talking 260 people. That's a lot of people. And so all these people whose names we don't know, whose lives we don't know, and yet before we're even born, we're carrying the trauma. So that's just kind of the introduction to epigenetics. Who would like to tackle how epigenetics, Stephen?
So I was tickled with delight when this question came up because I'm a big fan of both Greg Braden and Dr. Bruce Lipton's work. And I'm going to start off with a story. And it was a series of repeating dreams that taught me an extraordinary life lesson. And so the first dream happened, and so I'm in this dream, and there was a part of me in me that inherently knew that I could fly, but I didn't know how, like the mechanics of it, like the physical body, muscle memory part of it. Like I didn't know how. I knew at a core level that I could do it, but I didn't know how. So I'm in this dream, and I'm flying through the air, and I'm in the air. I'm like, oh crap, I can't, I know I can fly, but I don't know how to be. And I hit the ground and I wake up. I like panicked while I was in the air, wasn't confident, knew that I could do it at some level, but didn't know how. So I lacked like the confidence. And so a little while later, the second dream occurred. And so I'm in the air with an opportunity to fly again. And I remember from my previous dream that I hit the ground. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to really try to get it this time. So I'm like flapping my arms to try to learn how to fly. And I'm like, oh no, I don't know how to do this. I'm trying really hard. And bam, I hit the ground again. And the third occasion of this dream, I'm back in the air flying again. And this time I was like, okay, I know that I can fly. I know it. There's like this deep inner claiming that I can fly. And I said, come to myself, come hell or high water, I am flying and I am not hitting the ground again. And it was that firm, rooted, embodied decision to fly that elicited a response where I could actually fly. And what this series of dreams showed me is that when there's ambiguity of like, I think I can do this, maybe, I don't know, sort of, I think I can, I know I can, but I don't know, like if there's like any level of incongruence or misalignment, then chances of something substantial taking root is unlikely. But from a deeply claimed, embodied place of, I am doing this, come hell or high water, I am doing this. That frequency of strength and conviction is the catalyst for change. And I believe that when it comes to epigenetics and our ability to influence something like generational trauma healing, which I also want to kind of corroborate, that the research shows that 7 generations of trauma show up in our DNA. And the research suggests that it actually skips a generation more meaningfully. So we tend to inherit the traumas of our grandparents more significantly than our immediate parents, and kind of so on. It kind of skips a generation. That's what the research is suggesting, at least. And anyways, so something that I've made important is like really looking at where does the generational healing need to happen in my world and in my family line. And where do I need to make firmly rooted, embodied decisions to actually meaningfully take that on and make that change that's needed to be made, rather than being ambiguous about it. I think it's that quality of this embodied conviction that is an important ingredient.
Beautiful. Thank you, Stephen. I want to read a couple comments from people, and then I have another question. But Kathy writes, we can affect 7 generations back and forward with energetic work to clear ancestral issues. And Midge writes, yes, we also carry the blessings, gifts, and love of 7 generations as well. So thank you, both of you, for those really important points. And I want to chime in on this one for a minute. It's pretty common that as a coach, I hear people complaining about, oh my God, it's my answer. I come from a long family of alcoholics. I come from a long family of victims, whatever it is. And that's real. I understand that. But let's pull back and look at the big picture. Our ancestors made incredible sacrifices for us to have the freedom that we have today. And we have phenomenal freedom and phenomenal abundance. And so while they were crossing the plains, crossing the oceans, fighting in wars, working 3 jobs, they did not have the time or the energy or the money or the resources to work on the alcoholism, to work on the domestic violence, to work on those issues. We do. We have so much freedom. We have so many tools. So they gave their lives many, many, many times just for a goal of a better life for my offspring. And we have that better life. So now let's pay it back by taking the time to work on the ancestral genetic issues. And that's how it can be a beautiful full cycle. So I just encourage everybody to look at it that way. I'm getting twinkles from Trish. Thank you, Trish. Yeah.
I think one of a big piece about this is to also do your decolonizing work. Not only for yourself and your family and the generations that come after you, but really for our world, and to really look at what the structures at play and how you're participating in them, because this is all part of our ancestral traumas. This is all part of how we view and move through the world. So that's one thing that I just think that's really important to look at the epigenetics. Until I started doing my decolonizing work, I didn't even trace my ancestry back. My teacher really called me out on that. And she's like, well, please, follow your lineage, hear their stories. What were their rituals, to really get back into the conversation of embodying and connecting with people, with the other humans that you reside with, and another piece just a tool. I don't know if you have access to this, but family constellations are incredible to start playing in some of that epigenetic ancestral history in your own lineage. The field is an amazing place to be. So I invite you out there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Trish. I'm going to read a few more comments and one more question, and then we'll have to wrap this up, actually. But a couple interesting. Our beloved mystic abbot Jerry writes that Swedish scientists have found that they can prove you are extra healthy if your grandparents had a serious period of starvation. Now that's interesting. All right. Kathy just talking about, yes, we are here to clear the negative traumas for ourselves and our future generations. Josiane, a new friend of ours, she's going to be on the Awakening World soon. She writes, epigenetics means literally above genes, the ability to turn on or off multi-generational transmission of trauma and or resilience and influence our environment. So thank you for sharing that, Josiane. All right. a lot of people were very inspired by your story, Stephen. We're going to have a lot of people having flying dreams tonight. Um, okay, here's a question from Phil, spelled Phyll. So he writes, or they write, we're all speaking pretty pragmatically about relationships, which is fine. But what do you think about the magic or pull towards someone that cannot be defined or quantified? How can we sustain this pull attraction? That's more than physical, a pull towards someone's heart, spirit, overall chi. I believe in a certain kismet, if you will, that exists between two people who fall in love, perhaps like the twin ray, or other couples that you see and you feel their magnetism towards one another. That's magic. Now, that's a wonderful question and quite loaded. So does anybody want to tackle that? Oh my gosh, I'm looking at all our four panelists and they're all kind of like,
Yeah, I can step into the ring again. Yeah.
okay, great. All right, Stephen. You get it.
What that Sharon question brought up for me is it's kind of ninja work, but like having like such an acutely dialed finger on the pulse of what's true in a connection, and like having the capacity to discern, like, is this person that I'm engaging with and who I think might be that like heart and soul magnetism level of connection that this person spoke to. It's like there's other faculties inside of us that can provide that a similar experience as well. And what for example, like trauma bonded relationships where there's just like this perfect cocktail of a recipe where one person's past pain history intermeshes with another person's past pain history, and there's just like this almost like mind-boggling perfection to how easily the buttons can be pushed. Like that's kind of on like the more difficult side of it, but it can also give us an experience where it like really escalates our neurochemistry into an over exaggerated response where there's just an extraordinary amount of dopamine and oxytocin, and we just get ridiculously love drunk off of our neurochemicals. And when those are running, it's like these chemicals that make us feel excited and happy and connected to someone, deeply connected to someone. And sometimes that escalated experience can lead us to believe that that's that nature of a relationship. And so I'm not making any of what I'm saying good, bad, right, or wrong. But I've seen it in my own life and in other people's, and definitely people that I've coached and have worked with, that our neurochemistry can really get amplified in a way that prevents us from actually seeing what's true and real, and it can lead us astray down unhealthy relationship dynamics. And so what I am advocating for is like, yeah, that beautiful heart and soul, like spiritual magnetism that happens between two people, where there's this response where these two frequencies come together and create something, create a new frequency that's a combination of the two, and having that be an expression of just gorgeous, extraordinary, divine magic. Like, yeah, that's such a beautiful experience. And yeah, there's just like a poetic beauty to how you spoke to that. And what I am advocating for is, yeah, just carrying oneself in a way in connection with someone where they're constantly staying like deeply attuned to like what's actually the truth, to make sure that we are engaging with people where there is that nature of a connection, and we're not being deluded by our neurochemistry. So that's what that share stirred up for me. So I'll pass the talking stick now.
Beautiful. So I think we are going to go beyond 9 o'clock because now the great questions are coming in. So now, if people are okay with it, and yes, Dolphin's already, I think, volunteered, so we'll stick around a little bit more. And I think there might be a couple of other RelationFlix teachers in the house. So if Erica or any of the other RelationFlix people want to pop on and say hello or answer a question, we can do that. Farah has a response to that last question, however. And your spotlight, Farah. Farah?
Yes. Sorry, it just takes me a while to unmute. Sorry about that. In terms of magic, you know, my partner and I have been together for a long time, and there was obviously a strong magic at the beginning of our relationship. And I think magic changes. I think the magic in our relationship now, because there are times when I look at my partner and I feel like I'm falling in love again. And I think the magic that comes now is when he says yes to that invitation of evolving. When he says, maybe when he shares a vulnerability that he hasn't shared for years. And that magic is so attractive. You know, when life is really evolving and you're witnessing it in front of you, not stagnating, not resisting, but actually evolving. I think that's a type of magic that is so incredible and so beautiful to witness. And I feel so grateful that I'm in a relationship where I can see that magic, that we've both said yes to that. We've both said yes to doing what it takes to evolve ourselves, to use even the hardest circumstances of life to try to shine, to, polish the rock. And I'd say that magic is far greater than the chemistry that we had when we first met. It's just a different kind of chemistry, but it's a very powerful one. So I wanted to add that into the mix, and I see that some of you are resonating with that. Glad to hear it.
A lot of people, I think, are resonating. People are going nuts over that. So thank you for representing the beauty and the challenge and the reality of a long-term marriage. And that's a really valuable piece. Thank you so much, Farah. Dolphin, do you want to read Omshar's question and then respond to it?
Okay. Let me just find it here. How far up is it? Oh dear. Oh yeah. How do you remain present when triggered by another? I tend to leave my body and my mind empties. Yeah. So, I first thing that I would say to that is that, there are levels of trigger. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that trigger is really just the activation of a well-practiced nervous system response to something that is deemed a threat implicitly by us. So lots is operating unconsciously. And I'm actually going to weave in another question that came through, which is like, how do we make the unconscious conscious? And so I just want to share my way of framing and making sense of this that has really come into focus for me over the last several years. So to me, the unconscious space, everything that operates in the implicit unconscious space, is in some ways made up of any of the moments in our life where we've said no to life. So when something arises and for whatever reason we deem it wrong, bad, it shouldn't be, we wish it were different, when we say no to life, something of that moment gets embedded in us in a conditioned way. This is an epigenetic thing as well. It gets embedded in us in an unconscious space. We actually begin to create unconsciousness in our conditioning as we say no to how life unfolds. And so if we're someone who's experienced a lot of pain and we've said no to life a lot, we're going to have a big, dark, scary, unconscious space that's running our lives. And so the question becomes, well, how do we begin pivoting out of that? How do we begin shifting out of a life that is mostly run by unconscious patterns? Well, it's in a moment of discomfort where normally we've said no, or we've used some way to get off the hook of simply being with life on life's terms, to soften, to become more open and present and to feel more deeply, in that moment, the threshold between our conscious awareness and our unconscious space becomes permeable. And not all of it, but some of the unconscious rises up into conscious awareness. In that moment, some aspect of the unconscious trigger is now present to us in our awareness. And then I have this rule of thumb. We are only responsible for what we are aware of. So in a moment where I say yes to being more present, more open, to feeling more of life, to some degree, I have more awareness of what is occurring in me. And to the degree that I'm more aware, I have more agency. So in that moment, it doesn't mean that there isn't still unconscious parts of my patterning running, but wherever I have more awareness because I'm saying yes to what's uncomfortable, I have more agency. And each moment I choose that kind of openness and that kind of agency, I begin to transform my unconscious patterns into conscious aspects of my being. So that to me is, it is the way. And then there's tools we can begin to use that facilitate that. Mindfulness practices and meditative practices, somatic practices, interpersonal relating practices, all are opportunities to show up in the present moment, especially when it's difficult or painful, and to bring the light of awareness to things that have been in the dark. So that's how we do it.
Thank you, Dolphin. Great questions. I want to read what Josiane just wrote and then riff on it for a minute. It's kind of going back to the question about attraction between people. She says, remember that magnetism attracts opposite forces, but it does not mean love. It may mean soul contracts, or one partner serving as a mirror for us to have our worst nightmares. Like attracts like. Now, I want to riff on that for a minute because there's something that I've learned having worked with about 1,000 couples now. You know, biology has proven that when two people are dating and they are both of an age, a procreation age, so they're in like their 20s and 30s, if they have a good DNA match, if they have a good genetic match, the pheromones talk to each other, and literally sexual chemistry between people of procreation age are the pheromones saying, let's make a baby because this is a good DNA match and it'll be a healthy baby. So that's science. And now I have something even better than science, Scott's belief system. Remember I was talking about belief systems. Now in Scott's belief system, I believe, based on my unscientific approach or study of 1,000 couples, that when we're past procreation age, but there's a strong mutual attraction, it's not about DNA making a baby, obviously. It's because my shit and your shit, or his stuff and her stuff, or their stuff and their stuff, is going to create a perfect puzzle to work on whatever stuff our soul still wants us to deal with. I absolutely believe it with every fiber of my being. So for anybody who's older, but there's that mutual attraction, know that the hotter the sex, the more it's going to be Pandora's box opening up and you have no idea what's going to come flying out, but it's the shit your soul wants you to work on. So that's my little piece on it. And I'll open it up if anybody else wants to riff on that. Anybody can speak.
Well, I love that because I actually really like the term bumping uglies, because I think that, you know, part of what attracts us to other people is this perfect match of things that ways that we can actually help each other grow. The only thing is both people have to say yes. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the important part of a relationship, that where you can actually work on that, is both people say yes.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. You know, Omoshar, who is grateful, and by the way, Omoshar is one of our faves. He's played music on many of our shows. Again, talks about going numb. So here's a question. What's a tool that any of you might offer to stop us from somebody who gets knocked out of their body? Because that's pretty common. In particular relationships, dynamic, difficult relationships, oftentimes there might be just that, it's like all of a sudden you see your ex or you see someone that triggers you and you get knocked out of your body. Any tips or tools for how to come back into the body and stay centered? Stephen?
Well, I got a little bit of a riff here, and it's coming from kind of like a more neurological science trauma informed perspective. So dissociation and kind of going numb, it's a survival response. It's a something that our body is doing to keep us protected from experiencing a tremendous amount of pain. And to kind of provide just like a little bit more context around that, an analogy that I love about how trauma can land in the body is with a race car driver. So I'm not particularly into race cars or anything like that, but it's a dynamite analogy. So a race car driver spends their career training and training and training on how to operate a motor vehicle at extremely fast speeds, where they have to make really quick decisions that are a matter of life and death. And a part of race car driver training is actually learning how to crash in a safer way in order to prevent injury. So they go through this intense training on how to crash as safe as possible, so that in the event where they're going 100 150 miles an hour and they do get into an accident, that they're equipped and ready. They have an inner framework on how to handle that moment in a very particular way. And so the likelihood of them getting hurt is diminished significantly. Whereas if someone like any of us in this room who is not a trained race car driver, and all of a sudden you're in a vehicle going 150 miles an hour and you take a turn a little bit too fast and the vehicle spins and flips out of control, so many of us are not equipped with the inner structure and framework and tools and knowledge on how to handle that particular moment. And so the likelihood of an injury is significantly amplified. While psychological and emotional trauma work in a similar manner and fashion, trauma happens when there's an overwhelming event that overstimulates our system in a way where we don't have this pre-existing context or framework on how to deal with it. There's this quality of like, this really intense thing happens, and I actually so don't know how to deal with this right now, that I go into like a freeze or an exaggerated fight or flight response. And because our body is so sensitive to patterns, it stores the memory of that event in our body in a way that's actually designed to protect us. Like, burnt by fire, bad, don't do that again. Don't stick your hand, stay away from the thing that hurts you. And that's often the nature of a trauma response. And so like when we go into numbness and dissociation, that's a result of a past trauma response, an overwhelmed nervous system that just didn't have the internal resourcing enough to handle a particular occasion. And I think just like bringing understanding to that, and having like just an inner framework where we know that that's actually what's running, begins to create coherence in the body. Like a trauma response is so escalated in incoherence, where there's all of these kind of missing pieces of information, like not having the race car driver training. There's missing pieces of data and information that are preventing us from bringing alignment, clarity, and coherence into something. And like that's what the journey is in trauma healing is bringing things that are incoherent and kind of messy in our sphere into a place of clarity, coherence, and understanding. And it's when we create that, oh, like this is what's going on for me type of revelational moment, that coherence really starts to land in the body, and then the trauma response starts to dissipate. And so that's how I'd speak to a dissociation response, is like find ways to down regulate in that moment that it's happening, or even upregulate. Maybe we need to upregulate into a more joyful, happy type of a disposition. And often when we get really triggered and nervous system activated, down regulating through self-soothing, self-compassion, loving that inner child up as deep as possible, like self-reassurance, like I've got you, I'm here for you, and I'm going to take care of you to the absolute best of my ability, and I'm never going to leave you. Like really giving ourselves what we're needing in that moment to de-escalate. And from that de-escalated space, and we get more regulated, more clarity starts to happen, and we can kind of find our coherence again. So it's a really big topic and question, but that's what I've got for this short show.
That was an incredible description of what happens with trauma in the body. You both are brilliant. I would like to share, so I work with a lot of people who are codependent and have a lot of trauma, work with a lot of women as well. And one of the things that I've noticed when I work with men is that they often disassociate. And the thing that I bring to them is neurogenic tremoring. I think that's what it's called. And it's a way to just bring yourself back into the present. And so let me know if you guys don't know about this, but it's like to regulate your nervous system in a fight or flight is to allow your body to really like move through the cortisol and adrenaline, right? So if you can just start a shake, like, and give yourself a good shake. I mean, shake for like 5 minutes if you can. If you can hold that shake to just bring yourself back in, to bring your consciousness and your body back into alignment is an amazing way to not disassociate in that moment. And this is coming from years of learning my own PTSD triggers and coming back into the space. So I hope that helps.
That's great. Thank you so much. All right, we're going to keep it to the last question. And then I'm going to give everybody a chance to kind of just their final thoughts and take a look at a few websites of people like Trish and Farah. But Mary has been asking about clearing the subconscious. So she's put in several questions about, can we really clear the subconscious? Are there things that really work so that we're not constantly being run by unconscious programming? And of course, Dolphin kind of referenced that a little bit about only being responsible for what we're aware of. So does anybody have a tip or a tool or practice about clearing the subconscious that you want to share? Or are we all just screwed?
No, we're all screwed, but not in a permanent way.
Okay.
No, I'd just like to add on to what I said, and then anyone else can fill in. To me, this is what life is here for. Like, life is literally made to integrate itself. So like epigenetics is not trauma in and of itself. Epigenetics is a head start. That's what epigenetics is. It's a head start. It's like our parents and our parents' parents lived in an environment, and these adaptations helped them survive. And the epigenetics lands in us as these unconscious, implicit ways of being and moving and behaving that are suited to certain environments. Now, the key is that as soon as those environments are not present anymore, it's time for us to evolve. And human beings have this incredible ability to remain attached to our conditioning in spite of not needing it anymore, because the pathway of that is painful. So to me, the clearing of the unconscious is about meeting the pain that will consistently arise and fall in our lives as a natural consequences of our unintegrated unconscious patterning. And as we show up for those moments with presence, with openness, with responsiveness, with care. I love the concept of reparenting. This is a question I ask myself. So for something that's more practical, a question that we can ask ourselves in the midst of triggered moments is, what would a loving, present, attuned, responsive parent do in this triggered space or for this triggered part of myself? And if we can begin making sense of and creating maps of what that actually looks and feels like, what that loving, present, attuned, responsive parent is going to be and do in that moment, we begin bringing a quality of presence and responsiveness to our injured unconscious parts that brings them into conscious awareness, that brings them into wholeness and integration. Now, again, there's lots of like EMDR and psychedelics, and like there's lots of ways we can pull back the veil for a time. But the real active ingredient is all of the moments of pain and discomfort that we consciously choose to not go away, that we consciously choose to show up with a warm, loving presence that that parent would have, that probably if we had had that when we were little, we wouldn't have so much of this stuff. But guess what? We're adults now, and it's time for us to parent those parts. So to me, that's the key. And there's lots of little bits and pieces that we can learn along the way, but the bread and butter of it is for us to begin to show up for our painful moments, for the discomfort of being human, and to bring love and compassion and care to those moments. And over time, that cleanses the subconscious.
That's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful, Dolphin. Thank you. Farah has something to share on this topic.
I agree wholeheartedly with everything that's been said. And I want to add something that works for me. You know, we spoke about a greater spirit of life, a greater force in life. And when it comes to difficult moments for me, what also helps me, in addition to doing the work of really tuning in and trying to soften and using all the best tools that I've been given, is I also surrender and commune with a benevolent higher power. And sometimes that's just lighting a candle on my altar. Sometimes it's a silent prayer in my heart. And I think that there's, I also have, I have some theories just like Scott does, but one of my theories about the greater benevolent force that is a part of all of life is that when we invoke it, it is an invitation for that force to come into our lives. When we call upon that force, when we commune with that force, it is an invitation. And then we're not just working with our individual self, facing all these traumas and clearing all this subconscious work and trying to do everything ourselves. I think we're also aligning with a greater power in life. And however you do that, whatever name you give that, whatever ritual you have, I think the most important thing for me is I encourage people to have a relationship, because there is a benevolent greater force available to all of us at all times. You can think of it within you, or you can think of it around you, or you can think of it in whatever way. But what allows it to do its work is when we invoke it and invite it and have a relationship with it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for talking about that. And while we're still digesting the loving wisdom of this woman, I want to let people know where you can find out more about her, which is her website. And her website is her name. It's Farah Nazarali. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Spelled FARAHNAZARALI. FarahNazarali.com.
You got it.
And you have a online retreat coming up. And so tell us a little bit about that.
It's 2 days of self-care, and it's really an invitation to commit to yourself, commit with other people who are going to practice yoga, learn about different practices that really nourish us on all levels. We're going to practice we're going to learn the Ayurvedic practice of body oiling, and we're going to have a Rose Delight cooking class, and there'll be lots of time to really take time to be quiet and still and journal. There'll be some podcasts that I'll be sharing. So it's an invitation to make a commitment to knowing yourself better, that tool that I wish I had when my first relationship broke apart.
So again, that's February 11th and 12th. It's online, everybody. It's an online yoga retreat. Wasn't it amazing how we're like learning how to do everything online now? It's actually Friday through Sunday, the 11th, 12th, and 13th. Very inexpensive. So go to her website and then just go to offerings and you'll find it. And Farah, I so have enjoyed meeting you. Thank you. I'm going to bring my partner Trish on so she can wax poetic on how wonderful you are, and then we'll turn it over to Trish for a moment.
Oh, I haven't been associated with you before, and I'm really grateful that you're showing up with such compassion and love and vibrance and openness and vulnerability. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been such an honor to share and be in conversation with all of you. I feel really, really fortunate and really blessed, and so grateful for all of you who are listening and who have been participating and sharing your questions. It's really been such a wonderful way to spend the evening.
Maybe you'll come teach on the Self-Love Show one of these Thursday mornings.
You bet.
Which is a great segue to let everybody know that if you haven't started watching the Self-Love Show, it's every Thursday morning. It's Trish and her partner Dawn. You'll get a chance to meet Dawn next weekend. She's going to be on The Awakening World next weekend. And also, for all things Trish Wright, you go to her website, which is embodied-happiness.com. Embodied-happiness.com. And Trish is a wonderful coach. And so, Trish, do you have room for new coachees?
I have one available spot in my coaching curriculum here.
Quick, grab it. Somebody out there, grab it, because she's an amazing coach. And what do you most enjoy specializing in at this time, Trish?
Well, I'm really working with multiple people on dissolving their codependency. That's what my specialization is. I'm also really passionate about helping men to get back into their bodies, which is really fun because it's, I have lots of love for people socialized as male. They've been harmed by the patriarchy too. And I really want to help them get back in touch with their feelings and their bodies and really their empathy and be better lovers and communicators and relationship beings.
Well, thank you very much, Trish, for all the amazing things you do in the world. And I so look forward to our Friday nights together. So thank you so much.
And I just want to say thanks to Dawn Light for taking over my shift next week so I can be at my father's service.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
I'm going to put the spotlight on both Dolphin and Stephen and kind of give them a chance to wrap up. Anything you guys want to add, either about your own personal work or about RelationFlix or the Depth Summit? I turn it over to you guys to wrap us up. But I'll come back for one final word.
Do you wanna take the lead here, Dolphin? I'm happy to give it to you
gosh.
on this one.
Okay, sure. I mean, I just had such a lovely time tonight. I love talking about all of this. I just look over and I see that basically no one's left the room since our scheduled finish time. It just heartens me to people's commitment and interest and just desire to explore these things, to engage, to ask questions. It's a good sign for us. I know the last couple of years have been unusual, and I've really seen it as not bad or good in and of itself, but has put pressure on us, and that pressure has provided a unique opportunity for us to tap more deeply into our resources, into our deeper relationship with our authenticity and the meaning of our lives in a way. I think I've never felt more connected to the meaning of my life than I am right now. So yeah, I just really appreciate Scott and Trish and your whole team for being so on board with us for inviting us into your space and sharing us with your people. It's noticed, and we just feel honored by that. So thank you for those that came and were in the room with us and that listened. Yeah, we just look forward to sharing so much more. This feels like a beautiful beginning. It's the beginning of a beautiful friendship, I could say. Stephen, do you have things for us? Should I keep
I'll
talking?
tag in. Yeah. So I just want to echo what Dolphin said, and just want to acknowledge everyone here who's a part of Scott's show, The Awakening World, and just want to say a warm-hearted hello to that community, and also the people who have tuned in from the Depth Summit as well. It's just so good to be here with all of you, and yeah, just really acknowledging that special place within all of us that wants to show up in the world in a way that really makes a difference and brings more love and beauty and magic, healing, transformation. Just like really acknowledging and honoring that part in everyone here, and just deep bows to you for making that important in your world, and just wanted to acknowledge and celebrate that quality in all of us. And I think one of the final things that I'm going to say is that it's just been an honor and a privilege to serve the world in a way that brings more health and amplifies the depth, quality, and potential of relationships on this planet, which is the RelationFlix mission statement. And it's just an honor to be of service in this way. And I'll just name that it's a project that we've worked really hard on and have poured tons of time and energy and resources into bringing into the world. And it's just an honor to be in the arena in this way with the community that we're building here. So on that note, I'm going to play a quick video, unless Scott has objections to that. Is now a good time?
No, go for it.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Cool.
Wow, that is so cool. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm going to bring Trish on too so we can both share how cool that is, Stephen.
Sexy video. Meow. Like lots of texture. Woo!
Well, I'm going to bring everybody back on, and I want to first of all thank you. As Dolphin pointed out, I love that pretty much everybody is still with us. So thank you, everybody watching in our Zoom room, everybody watching on Facebook, Unify, Love Coach Academy, all of you watching the recording. I see a lot of our friends, Mystic Abbott, Cherry, and just I want to name everybody. There's just a lot of people we love. And this is just the first of 3 shows dedicated this weekend to RelationFlix. So a reminder, definitely join tomorrow night and Sunday morning for the Awakening World as we continue the Relationship Depth Summit and introducing everybody to RelationFlix. And look at all those people who haven't been on yet tonight. Those are all people you're going to get to see tomorrow and or Sunday. And as we always do on Saturday night, it's going to be, we're going to have some amazing music with Kristen Hoffman and Sister Stone, 2 of our absolute favorite musical artists. So definitely make sure you join us tomorrow night and Sunday morning. And when you're not doing that, please do the Depth Summit. So make this whole weekend a weekend of getting to know all these teachers. And again, go to the Depth Summit, get involved, watch, each of these people who are going to get, and they each get like 50 minutes, correct? On your schedule?
Yeah, 55 minutes.
Yeah. So it's a chance to really go deep with all these amazing teachers 30 plus teachers over the weekend that you can get by going to the Depth Summit. So, all right. Thank you, everybody, for watching. It's been a really, really powerful show. And we look forward to seeing you all throughout the weekend. Take care, everybody. Have a beautiful, beautiful evening, and good night.